If you've been told you need to find a SAP after a DOT drug or alcohol violation and you're not really sure where to start, I'm going to walk you through how to find a SAP and what to watch out for so you don't waste your time or money. And if we haven't met, my name's Cindy Athey. I'm a DOT qualified SAP and I help CDL drivers and other safety sensitive employees every day get through the return to duty process. So today I wanted to make it easy, and so that you know exactly how to find a DOT qualified SAP and so that you can get back to work. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest questions I get is people don't know where to start. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I'm going to keep this simple and direct. The first thing I want you to do is start with an official source. And that's not always just Google, because a lot of people will put in SAP near me in Google. And while that'll bring up some options, it can also bring up people who are not actually qualified under DOT regulations. And it's really important that you find a qualified SAP because they know the regulations and how to do it correctly so that when you get back to work, there's no headaches later. So you want to find a SAP locator like SAPlist.com and search by your area or your zip code, state, or whatever. And that'll bring up a list of qualified SAPs. And then you can go research their website. It'll have the phone number, email, things like that. Now, once you have that list, don't just pick the first name on there. I always recommend you call 2 or 3 SAPs because it's very important that you find one that's a good fit. The reason is prices vary, timelines vary, and honestly, the way people communicate varies. So you want someone who can explain things clearly, treats you with respect, and knows what they're doing. That's so important in this process. So take your time finding a SAP and don't just designate any SAP you come across in the clearinghouse. So when you call the SAP, here's some important questions you should ask. You should ask, what's your total fee and what does that include? Here's what it typically should include: your SAP assessment and follow-up meetings, DOT paperwork, clearinghouse updates, and case management once you get through the return to duty testing process. Because as you start applying for jobs, your employer's going to say, I need the SAP's paperwork. You'll reach out to the SAP. They'll have you sign a release of information form for that employer because of HIPAA, and then they'll send the paperwork on. They should not charge extra for that. That should be included in the SAP fee. You also want to ask them, how long does the process typically take? They can't tell you exactly until they do the assessment. But they can give you the gist, right? So DOT says the SAP must recommend a minimum of substance abuse education up through treatment if the person needs a higher level of care. That can mean many different things. Employees that come through for substance abuse education, that can be done fairly quickly. Those courses get completed. The driver or the employee isn't off work for too terribly long. If they need treatment, that means that issue didn't just start with this one drug test, right? So sometimes that can take a little longer. And most importantly, you need to ask, are they DOT qualified? Because that's important. This process has to be done correctly. And not every therapist or provider is qualified to do SAP assessments under DOT rules. So you also want to make sure they can explain the process to you in a way that makes sense. And if you're feeling confused after the call, probably not the best fit, right? And now this is very important. Here's some red flags you really want to watch out for when you're talking to SAPs before you hire them. If anyone's promising a quick or guaranteed completion, red flag. If they're saying they can clear your clearinghouse quickly, no. SAPs can only do steps 1 through 4. 5 and 6 is with the employer or the consortium, right? Or if they're trying to skip steps in the process. You don't want that. You want it done correctly so there's no issues with your CDL, or your position later on. And the SAP process is very regulated and it has to be done correctly. Anyone offering shortcuts is someone you kind of want to stay away from. I know this process seems really overwhelming, and especially if it's your first time going through, right? But if you take it step by step and make sure you're working with someone qualified, you'll get through it and you'll get back to work. If you ever have any questions, feel free to drop a comment below or reach out and I'll try to answer your questions. And if this video was helpful, feel free to give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I try to make videos breaking down the SAP process every week or two. I also forgot, if you need some extra help, or you don't know how to log into your clearinghouse dashboard, check out the link down in the description box to my Linktree, and there's some free driver resources over there, like the directions on how to log in or designate your SAP in the clearinghouse. And also, very important, don't just randomly designate a SAP in the clearinghouse, because once you attend the assessment with them, you're stuck with them through the entire process. So it's really important you make a good judgment call on the front end and, talk to that person. If you get a good feel, great. If you feel like something's off, pass, move on to another name. And thank you for watching. And until next time, take care.